Good evening, everyone. I am John O'Loughlin. Welcome to my channel. It's called McDuff underscore 2020. And tonight, wrapping up the year in a way with a couple of really great bloggers, journalists, and writers, Mark Kulacz and Bill Taylor. The two of them have been on my show as individual guests, and it's always a pleasure to have either one of them. But this is kind of something I put together for my own purposes, which is I've always wanted to hear these two guys talk together. So my hope tonight is to have a very stimulating conversation and update everybody with, say, what do you think have been the big stories this year for your research? What have you learned that you think is really worth emphasizing as we start to look back on 2020? And of course, whatever you've been working on currently, your research is always very interesting, and I want to get caught up as much as I can in the little bit of time we have tonight. So, without further ado, I'm going to welcome both of these very astute gentlemen to the show at once. In the middle is Bill Taylor, and on the right of the screen, Mark Kulacz. Good evening, gentlemen.
Hey, John. How are you?
Good evening, John.
Hey,
Hey, Bill.
good to have you both here, and I'm looking forward to this very much. So, Bill Taylor, New Jersey. We've all been kind of very interested in following your tweets about New Jersey and the politics going on there. Suffice to say, I think people are quite angry, and with what it looks very justified. I looked at a map that had a kind of a red-blue division of New Jersey this afternoon, and I could see that kind of the red part is in the upper left and the lower right, and the blue part is in the lower left and the upper right. So it's kind of almost like a checkerboard. But what's going on there, and how's everything going for you, Bill Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, New Jersey is New Jersey probably suffered as much from elections. Well, I won't say the word election engineering as any other state. We sort of perfected it here decades and decades ago when the Jersey City machine was the main power. But the Essex and Hudson County, which are in North Jersey, the two closest counties to New York, they're just known for their machine politics, and they've always been corrupt, and they've always been able to find votes. When what we have now is a Boston boy, Phil Murphy, is doubling down on the stupidity as far as lockdowns and closing, just arbitrary closing of restaurants or sporting events or you name it. And it's gotten to the point where you have to think that it's either he's very afraid of what is coming for him individually, or it's at some other level, it's an indoctrination because he's in on it and he's participating in it from a grander perspective. If the Great Reset, is as dire as a real thing as it might be, my concern is that he's not being ridiculous out of self-preservation, hoping that maybe he could skirt by making everybody else miserable. But it's more acclimate the rest of the state to the idea of a permanent state of lockdown, a permanent state of almost martial law. It's gotten to the point of absurdity, and I've tried to get my fellow New Jerseyans to sort of fight it with absurdity. It's the lock everything about his mandates or his dictates is just absurd on its face. Considering there's no science behind any of this, and the small businesses are all being crushed, and so when it reaches that level, you can't answer it with reason because people don't see how absurd it is. So you almost have to counter it with something more ridiculous. So at least you get the attention that this whole thing is ridiculous. I don't know if that makes sense, but I could see, hopefully Phil Murphy is doing this because he thinks he's going to get picked up by the feds someday for putting all those people in nursing homes, and he's feeling guilty about it. And you have the same thing with Cuomo in the next state over. So I don't know. It's just it's disturbing from where I see it, but I'm one of the few people I think that really appreciates it. Appreciates the stupidity and the absurdity of it from following you guys all these past 2 or 3 years.
Oh no! What have we done?
There's no conspiracy too small now. I was never a conspiracy theorist, but now we're to the point. Everything looks like a conspiracy now. I'm game, all except for flat Earth. Whatever they can throw at us. I have a question. I have a doubt or a question about what the real true motivations are.
Well, thank you, and let's move over to Mark now up in Massachusetts. And I was trying to think: is there a red area in Massachusetts, or is the whole thing just very, very blue? What's it like up there? And are they doing? What's the status of lockdowns in Massachusetts?
There's a few slightly reddish areas in the western part of the state, but for the most part, it's blue. We do have a very progressive Republican governor, Charlie Baker, who knows? I mean, he's right in that he's that type of Republican that could possibly run for a president someday. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the discussion of maybe 10 or 20 people that the Republican Party would throw out there someday. First couple of years, it seemed to be going pretty good. I'm not loving the way he's handling the pandemic. It's might as well just have a Democrat at this point. But what Bill says, right now I see many signs that say, science is real. One of the several values all around the neighborhood, all around the town, so to say. And yet, if you talk about science, if you wanted to do real raw numbers analysis, that's discouraged. I think this is happening all around many areas around the country right now. But for the most part, even though Massachusetts is Democratic, I would not say it fits the profile of if it isn't even real at all. You have this what's being projected as this Antifa, radical, super ultra progressive, whatever thing. It's not really like that. It's mostly there's a lot of working class people here who just want a smaller government and maybe lean more libertarian. I just don't think that they feel as though it's even worth the effort to, we have many people, there's many offices, local offices that only have one option on the ticket when you go to vote. And that's got to change. That's got to change. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, it sounds interesting. I mean, to me, here's the point that I can take from this already, and that is that the three of us, we all live in states that are, Maryland, of course, is very blue. Massachusetts, very blue. New Jersey, I don't know, I guess, but they all three have Republican governors, and we have Governor Hogan here. Oh, you have a Democrat?
Yes.
Oh, oh, of course, yeah. I get them confused because they're all like deep state governors,
Yeah, but they're all on the same team anyway.
They are. That's what I was going to say is with that, especially with Hogan, and that they kind of are a wall against the Republicans, the real Republicans that would like to protest against all this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of Republicans down here in Southern Maryland, but they're real Republicans. They're conservatives, and they want, libertarians, and very much of a pro-Constitution Republicans. Whereas Hogan, I don't think he's pro-Constitution. I think he's just going along with the deep state. and that that politically cuts off all of the real Republicans. When you've got I guess a rhino would be the word in there that's, just cuts it off. It's like a shot blocker, to use a George Webb analogy. They're shot blockers. You can't get past them with a real libertarian individualist individual rights argument. But that does sound scary, Mark, with people putting signs around that say, science is real, and then they can't talk about science. That is scary.
You can't talk about. You can't look at real climate data. You can't look at the epidemiology of the pandemic. You can't talk fiscal policies. It's just it's shunned. So we have something called I think TruthStream Media did a good job on it about the scientism right now, where you have the scientist overlords who say what is to be believed, and people need to follow that, which is absolutely the opposite of science. Science is not the rules. Science is actually a process to determine what the best understanding is, and then how to continue to refine that. It's not the rules themselves. So yes, science is real, but science is not the laws themselves. It's the process of coming up with the laws of the nature and what we understand, and how to test it and go forward. So science is in big trouble right now, John. That's one lesson from 2020. Science is in trouble, and we're all in trouble if real science is in trouble.
Yeah, seriously. They co-opted the word, they've taken science, and instead of teaching kids what science is, they turned science into a god. And you have to listen to science, because science is, that's the truth. It's kind of scary. Bill, you've got kids in school. What do you say about all this?
Well, I took them out of the public school, and now they go to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just trying to stay ahead a little bit there. Yeah, I mean, this. Some of my research and some of Mark's research, I think we both found that this kind of talk goes back a long ways. And what I try and do, because it's more interesting than I just cover the current events, is try and see what the origins of this technocracy, or this science-oriented replacement for spiritual beliefs, came from or originated. And actually, and it's certainly not a discovery by me, but people like James Corbett have gone through the whole idea of the technocracy, and how that plays into the technocracy movement in the 1930s, how that plays into sort of what's going on now, where learned men of science will ultimately determine how resources are allocated, sort of a communist type system. But of course, these learned scientists are all altruistic on their planet. But this is an idea that goes back to the 20s and 30s. And even before that, the eugenics movement, fits right into the technocratic movement, in that if you have fewer variables in your formula, your algorithm, your AI machine, to determine the best way to who's worth keeping, who's worth tossing away, or what their means of production should look like, or what how resources should be distributed, whether it's food or luxury items. I think that the eugenics movement is a very big component of this technocratic idea that science will save us all, because ultimately if you can get the number of variables down to less than a million, it's certainly better than having variables that top 8 billion. I'm not sure if they're looking to get rid of 790 billion people, or 7.9 billion people, but it would certainly help in their goal. Because they've convinced themselves that they know better, but it is they're actually not that bright at all, because they anybody who knows anything about the human mind, it's it's those variables that they never account for, which will eventually bite them in the ass. And I would say that almost if we're on the right track here with President Trump, I would say that's probably what's happened here in the past year, in that Trump was a variable they couldn't put into the model. So they've done everything to try and get rid of that variable, and sort of accelerated plans to get rid of all the supporters or get rid of the anybody who's not going to acquiesce. And this goes back a long way, and that's and you wind up with the Gates, who's got he's got more money than he has brains, I believe.
I think Mark can tell us a little something about Gates. You want to update us as to what you've been doing with Warren Buffett and that whole crew?
It's been a study going back to the Gates family. Again, like what Bill says, we like to study the genealogy, try to find the roots, because that can help us understand a current network and why certain relationships seem to exist. I think for the most part, Bill Gates, Microsoft was made. It was the right time, right place. His father was far more well connected, as well as his mother. It's not for the reasons which many other people have suggested. It's not simply because of his father was in Planned Parenthood and therefore as a eugenics fan. It's not. I think that's reducing things to. It's oversimplifying things, and people miss out on the bigger picture, and that is the connections that his father had to all the government in the state of Washington and all the way to Washington, D.C. And then being from the city of Bremerton in Washington, Puget Sound Naval Yard. And anyways, I'm going to take a step back and how I answer that. And that we get into these traps, and I still do it myself, and I'm going to continue to make this mistake of thinking that the corruption that exists in the world is because of some people who are, have reached a certain level of a wealth, power, entitlement, and our problems are because of them, right? But we're all in this. We enable that in a way as citizens. We enable that by being less involved, by allowing only one person to run on the ticket, by completely ignoring local government and only paying attention to regional government. We are part of that problem. If you were to take the top 200 elite people in the world, let's just say, thought experiment, right? And not that I would want this, but just choose Rockefellers and whoever else you want to throw in there, right? And they just disappeared. The same situation would evolve again. It's not we're not there only in this situation because a few people, maybe with bad intentions or entitlement, exist. We've all been part of creating this. So I'm hoping to, and I'm a total hypocrite here. I'm trying not to be though, is to just to encourage the fix from down below, meeting with the community, with the family, and then ultimately working its way up from there. Trying to understand and appreciate my role, my family's role, my community's role in this, as opposed to making it all about looking at a few people. But that said, understanding like I've been doing a lot of research on the Barr family and 9/11, potentially Patriot Act. That's important to understand too. But going back to what I said, if he never existed, a lot of that probably would have happened anyways. It would have just played out a little bit differently because myself and others locally have not been involved, and that's something that I'm really appreciating now. If you want to say a lesson from 2020, this is becoming very, very clear to me right now.
So it's get involved with your local government, local government,
local church. Do not underestimate how important your family and your extended family is. And eventually, the more and more people focus on that, the less and less leftovers there's going to be for that corruption up on top. We enable that. by ignoring our local community and our local responsibilities. So all we can do is address what we have control over. And anyways, and I'm a hypocrite there. I'm not even following what I'm saying. So I got a lot of work and a lot of practice to do.
Well, you certainly are working hard, and we appreciate all the great research you're doing and posting and organizing over at HousatonicITS.com. Bill, what do you think? Is community action going to help? Do you think it's worth getting out and going to the going to the town meetings and raising your voice?
Yeah, to some extent, it definitely helps. One of the problems is I think that almost every institution is corrupted. I mean, the Catholic churches in my area are certainly playing into the whole idea of grandma's going to die if you go see her. Or at least a few, at least I would say most of them. If there's 4 or 5 around here, and yeah, Mark has it right. And from the perspective that you have to be active, but you also have to be being active in the community. There's not a lot of people who are brave enough to be active in the community. When I say brave enough, it has nothing to do with taking a militant stance on anything. It's just taking an unpopular stance where you might get gossiped about on Facebook. I mean, one of my arguments, we got into a whole mandatory, not mandatory, but a standardized testing debate around this area about 4 or 5 years ago. And, the standardized test questions were ridiculous. The whole Common Core, which was based on, was ridiculous. Everybody knew it was ridiculous. And, I was the one standing out in our district that says my daughter's not going to take it. And they tried to, first they tried a little bullying. I said, I told them to go take a walk, and I actually wrote the Board of Education, says I'm going to tell you what the rules are from now on regarding this testing and regarding what you're going to do for my daughter. But a lot of people, you sort of become a pariah. I wouldn't say I became a pariah, but nobody wants to give you the high five out in the open. They want to give it to you under the table because they're all afraid of their positions within the community from a social point of view rather than an action point of view. One of the tweets that I put out 2 or 3 weeks ago, maybe just last week, was if somebody in a white lab coat came up to half the parents in New Jersey and says, we're going to remove one of your kids' fingers because the science tells us to do that, half the state of population, half the parents in New Jersey would allow it. They wouldn't question it. The guy's got a lab coat. He's got a clipboard. He's going to take one of your fingers there, Sally. And it would.
That sounded like uh-oh, what happened? We lost our Skype connection. Oh, boy. Guys, we're going to have to get you back. Hang on, please. So my iPad died, and I'm going to have to trade over to Skype on the iMac. So just give me a second and see if I can't get everybody back here. Trying to get everybody back.
Yeah, no, it's Escape from New York around here. It really is.
Okay, everybody's back alive now. Sorry,
There
we
we
had a
go.
little break with Skype, but looks like we're back.
We're good.
And just 1 second, and let me straighten out this video. Oh, I see. No, one more thing to do here, and we will have you back.
When you're writing your book on Gibson Island.
Yeah, I keep meaning to. I actually have I think I'd have enough for a book. I wrote a book years ago about a completely different subject, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't know what to do with it afterwards. So if I do it, I'd like to have like a plan as far as distribution, that kind of thing. I like to, I sort of wrote the book and then looked at how the book market works. This time I need to study like the industry.
Okay, thanks for your patience, folks. We are back now, and back with Bill Taylor and Mark Kulacz, and we're talking about local government getting involved as a possible way to improve the situation in our country. But one of the things, guys, that bothers me is we have the looming inoculation debate that's going to hit us all. I mean, we see it in the newspaper all the time, like Brazil, I think they've done it. Iceland is going to inoculate every citizen of Iceland. It looks like they're doing the same thing in Ireland and England and all over the world. It's going to be talk about social pressure. Can you imagine being on the wrong side of that debate in your local community, and everybody else is like, hey, if you don't take the shot, then you're endangering my children. This is staring us in the face, and it's one of the things that really drives me in hoping and praying that President Trump is reelected, because I don't think that there's any way that they could do it under a Trump administration. The people would be just too, they would feel that they had to, the president was going to have to stick with them and stand up for their rights not to take the shot. On the other hand, if sorry, just got a message there and it threw me off. If, on the other hand, though, if Biden takes the White House, then what's the defense? How can we, if Governor Hogan says, everybody's going to have to take the shot, well, here I am stuck in Maryland, and where can I go? I don't have any options. Sell my house, move to Florida? Come on. That's not a viable option for the sizable amount of people that will object to this. But do we have any defenses? Would the courts help us? The courts are not going to help us this time, I don't think. I don't see, unless, somehow real science were actually to enter the picture. And that's where they got us, isn't it? I mean, it goes back to, are we dealing with facts, or are we just dealing with the current, story that we're being fed by the media that's generated from, those elites? However, whatever their names are, they're still, as you say, Mark, going to be there. Uh-oh, we lost the Skype once again. Terribly sorry, guys. Let's see if we can do it this way. Well, guys, if you can hear me, I'm going to try to call you on my. If you could hang up from this phone call and. All right, hold on a second. Having a little technical problem here.
That's why he's rescuing you.
Okay, I got these two guys on the group. Wait a minute.
It's all good. Wi-Fi. I love this.
The problem is this iPad is acting like it doesn't have any power, but it does have power. So I can't figure out why it's not giving me.
Oh, I can see your. Just one moment. Oh, I see. It's running out of power. Yeah. I think they can hear my voice.
Yeah, I think so. All right, you want to be on camera?